This is Tim O'Brien from Seattle. It's November 2nd, 2025. And now for today's news. Our first story is in security. A group of researchers published a paper called Hyzen Trojans. They are not there until they are triggered. And this was published by Mavurapu, Sean, Guo, Arias, and Sullivan. It's available on archive. What these researchers uncovered were called Hyzen Trojans. It's a new attack class that exploits vulnerabilities in electronic design automation tools, EDA tools, rather than targeting hardware directly. This study found that 83% of the analyzed EDA tools contain exploitable bugs, including buffer overflows, command injections, and memory corruption in synthesis engines. In their research, they demonstrated this attack on commercial tools and open source tools alike. And to be clear, this is an active research project with proof of concept exploits. But there's no confirmed in-the-wild attack yet. But one can imagine that if they found this vulnerability, it has likely been used before. This flips hardware security on its head. Instead of hiding malicious circuits and chips, attackers will compromise the tools that design the chips themselves. It's like poisoning the blueprints rather than the building. And since there's no malicious hardware to detect, traditional security checks will be blind. With 83% of tools vulnerable, okay, so my assumption is many people listening to this are not hardware designers. I happen to go to school for it, but I don't do it anymore. It's been 20 years. So I'm going to try to explain a little bit about all these acronyms. First, EDA tools. When you design a chip or a circuit, you're essentially writing a language, and that language is usually VHDL or Verilog, and that stands for VHSIC, Hardware Description Language, which is an acronym within an acronym. VHSIC stands for Very High Speed Integrated Circuit. So think of this as a language that you write, and it describes hardware behavior and structure. What are the inputs and outputs for the gates that you're designing? EDA tools then compile that HDL, that hardware description language, into register transfer level or gate level netlists. Again, I'm not going to describe what that means, but ultimately what they do is they compile it into a file that's called GDS2, or the Graphic Design System 2, and that's the final layout file that a chip design team sends to the foundry at tapeout. It's literally the geometric blueprint of the integrated circuit. It defines every polygon, layer, mask shape that is ultimately printed on silicon, translating the logical design into a precise physical geometry for fabrication. But once again, just to reiterate for people unfamiliar with how hardware is designed and manufactured, I'll reiterate that process. How chips are built, and I'll admit it's been 20 years since I've done this, but the process is largely the same. There's a language that describes your circuit. It's called HDL, VHDL. That's compiled to register transfer level. You then turn that into some sort of layout file, in this case a GDS2 file. For a deeper dive, these researchers probed multiple commercial and open source EDA components across synthesis, simulation, and place and route. 83% of the tools analyzed had exploitable bugs, buffer overflows, command injection, and possible outcomes is arbitrary code execution on the build host, silent netlist edits that survive sign-off, insertion of backdoors, triggered logic, cryptographic weakening. If you want more information or if you want to read this paper, there are links in the show notes. Today's programming language story is about Haskell. Haskell is now available on browsers through WebAssembly. The Glasgow Haskell Compiler, the GHC, one of the most sophisticated functional programming language compilers on the market, is now running entirely in web browsers using WebAssembly. Developers can write, compile, and run Haskell code directly in the browser without installing anything locally. This represents a major milestone for functional programming accessibility, bringing advanced type systems and lazy evaluation to the web platform. So really, this is less a Haskell story than it is a WebAssembly story. And I want to explain what WebAssembly is, because it's one of those topics that's coming up more and more. And in my own experience, I've seen a lot of technical people just nod and say, oh yeah, I know WebAssembly, when in reality, they don't fully understand what it is. So I'm going to explain it for their benefit. Wasm, or WebAssembly, is a low-level, sandboxed bytecode that lets code written in languages like C, C++, Rust, and now Haskell run in the browser at near native speeds. And that's critical. There are certain applications on the web that require more computing power than you can get with pure JavaScript. Think about graphics. Think about 3D rendering. This is where WebAssembly starts to become essential. And you can think of it as a universal performance layer for the web. Instead of rewriting everything in JavaScript, you compile existing languages to Wasm, and you get fast, portable, and secure execution on any modern browser. It powers things like video editors, CAD, emulators, and now a full Haskell toolchain, no installs and no plugins. WebAssembly isn't really assembly language. Don't think about this like what you saw in the 1980s. It's a virtual, portable instruction set that plays the same role for the web that machine code plays for CPUs. It's assembly-like because it's low-level and efficient, but not because it maps to real processor operation codes. Wasm runs inside a virtual machine that's baked into every major browser, and also many servers, runtimes, and edge systems. It gives compiled languages like C, C++, Rust, Zig a safe, fast sandbox to execute in. WebAssembly runs in a memory-safe, capability-limited sandbox. It can't read files, open sockets, or escape to the operating system unless you explicitly let it. Think of it as a safer, more portable machine code within a firewall of validation and host-controlled permissions. If you have a browser that was installed after around 2017 or 2018, you are likely ready to run WebAssembly. You have that virtual machine embedded. And if you've used tools like Figma, SketchUp, AutoCAD has a web app, Unity WebGL, and various browser games, these are already using WebAssembly. So if you want to learn more about WebAssembly, see the show notes for links. Now next, what is Haskell? Haskell is a language, and it's a way of writing software that builds programs from small, math-like building blocks. It focuses on correctness and reliability, helping catch mistakes early and making code faster to reason about. But what makes this interesting isn't Haskell itself, it's the feat. GHC is complicated, and getting it to generate WebAssembly is an achievement to be celebrated. The broader significance that this means is that programming education and experimentation will be easier. But this follows a larger trend that I am noticing, in that tools are moving more towards the web. We've seen Python interpreters in the browser. Now we have a full Haskell compiler. I still would recommend that most programmers focusing on the web should know JavaScript, should know Node.js. But I also think that WebAssembly is playing a huge role in making the browser more polyglot or multi-language. For more information, please see the show notes. Today's Weird Bucket story is about dark energy. Is dark energy getting weaker? New evidence strengthens the case. And this is from the Dark Energy Spectroscopic Instrument Collaboration at Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. DESI, a massive spectrograph on the Mael telescope at Kitt Peak, Arizona, mapped 15 million galaxies across 11 billion years of cosmic history. The data that they gathered shows a 4.2 sigma deviation from the standard model. This suggests that dark energy strength may be decreasing over time. But it also lines up with independent evidence from the Union 3 supernova catalog, 2,087 type 1a supernovas, and it supports this finding. Why this is interesting. This measurement, this 4.2 sigma deviation, could overturn one of physics' most fundamental assumptions and completely change how the universe ends. Instead of eternal expansion into cold darkness, we might get something entirely different, the Big Crunch. Now here's the bombshell. For 25 years, we believed in something called the lambda CDM model. The lambda represents Einstein's cosmological constant, basically a number that says dark energy has always been the same strength and will always be. It's like having a constant force pushing the universe apart. Under this model, the universe expands faster and faster forever, eventually reaching heat death. All the stars burn out, black holes evaporate, and everything becomes a cold, empty void. But DESI's data suggests that dark energy might have an equation of state that's changing over time. This means that the repulsive force of dark energy could be weakening. So let me emphasize the significance of that 4.2 sigma deviation. In science, sigma measures how unlikely something is to be a fluke. A 4.2 sigma result means that there's only about a 1 in 40,000 chance that this is random noise. Scientists usually demand 5 sigma, 1 in 3.5 million, to claim a discovery, but 4.2 is strong enough that everyone's paying attention. What's deviating, the expansion rate of the universe at different times. And remember, when we look up at space, we're looking back in time. Those expansion rates over time don't match what the lambda CDM predicts. Galaxies 8 billion years ago were moving apart differently than the model says they should have been. And here's what makes this rock solid. It's not just DESI saying this. The Union 3 supernova catalog found the same thing using a completely different model. Union 3 is the largest compilation ever of type 1a supernova. 1a supernova are exploding white dwarf stars that always blow up with the same brightness, making them the, quote, standard candle for measuring cosmic distances. By tracking 2,087 of these explosions across 7 billion years, they can independently measure how fast the universe was expanding at different times. So while DESI is taking spectrographs of galaxies, Union 3 is looking at stellar explosions or standard candles. 2 different experiments, 2 different measurements, 2 different teams, same results. Dark energy appears to be weakening. So again, just to reiterate, if dark energy keeps weakening, the expansion could slow down and eventually stop. That should be front page everywhere. We're literally talking about whether the universe ends in ice or fire, or maybe doesn't end at all. We have enough time to figure out what to do, though. If it's heat death, it's going to be a Google years from now that's 10 to the 100. And if it's the big crunch, we might be looking at something around 100 to 140 billion years from now. That's today's news. And there's a little bit more. The FCC plans to rescind a Biden-era ruling requiring ISPs to secure their networks. Despite recent Salt Typhoon attacks on major telecom providers, we're moving to a voluntary commitment model. Ubuntu 26.04 will adopt Rust-based implementations of core Linux utilities, replacing decades-old new core utils with memory-safe alternatives, including ls, cp, mv, and the sudo command. An MIT physicist developed a revolutionary technique that uses an atom's own electrons as probes to peek inside the nucleus. This potentially helps scientists detect violations of fundamental symmetries that could explain why our universe has almost no antimatter. That last story is a candidate for tomorrow's Weird Bucket. So that's the technology news for November 2nd, 2025. I hope you have a good Sunday and get ready for the week.